All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim out here pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is the brother Quanawath come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And as you see right here on the peoplesvoice.tv, it says Australia passes bill authorizing police to arrest citizens who post MIS information online. And you already know we're gonna be code wording, man. 'Cause, Esau, with his different algorithms and whatnot, man. So we got to speak in code, otherwise he's gonna take the video down. But nonetheless, right, we've been seeing right for these last few years, heavily, Esau has been, attacking, these social media platforms, as well as, putting in place different, laws and policies and bills, right, that ultimately allow for, them to come after those who post what they consider, right, to be, MIS or DIS information online, right, or anti-SEM or anti-HETE, content online, and now you're starting to see these different bills and laws that have been introduced over the years. Now they're starting to become, set in stone, and we're going to go through just a couple of them, right, that ultimately were just recently passed in this article, in Australia, but before we get this, right, I ultimately want to grab this precept in St. John, the 15th chapter, and we'll start at verse 18. It says, if the world hate you, right, the words of Yahweh Shai, right, it says, if the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love his own, but because you're not of this world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. And everything that we preach and what we talk about, is contrary to this world, man. So we are hated, right? Because Yahweh Shai was contrary to the world, right? When he was here in the flesh, right? And even now, right? Yahweh Shai is completely contrary, to Esau, Edom, right? And the society that he has ultimately built up, right? Because we understand that Hebrews 12 and 16, right? That Esau is profane, which means he's what? He's outside the temple, right? He's in opposition to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai and righteousness, right? We understand that Job 9 and 24, even what is that? Malachi 1 and 4, right? Esau is considered, right, the wicked, right? And Esau, Edom today, will be the so-called white man, right? And it's not about skin color, right? We understand that starting from the head all the way down, Esau, right, is a majority so-called white, starting with, the elite bankers, all the way on down, right? Even, majority of these, the heads of these different major companies, even smaller companies, the heads of a lot of these different countries, are Edomites, but nonetheless, right, we are completely hated because we're in opposition to his society. We're in opposition, to him being in rulership, right? Scriptures say that we're not for his turn, right? In Wisdom of Solomon, the 2nd chapter, right? We are not for his turn, right? We're for Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, which ultimately, allows for us to be hated in this world, man. This is a place, where wrong judgment proceedeth, man. Where people are, men are committing adultery, right? Sleeping with other men's wives openly and knowing this, right? Women, being harlots, being adulterers, adulteresses, right? women going around and sleeping with multiple men, and they'll do this within one setting, right? And multiple times a day. So women, this is why you see women with 100, 200, 1,000 body, 1,500 body counts, because they'll go and sleep with multiple men in one setting. This place is wicked, evil. And through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, we speak against that. Especially right to our people, right, the Israelites, right, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right. This is what we've been ultimately called to do, right. And Salakia just kind of going through the spirit, but this is Isaiah 51 and verse 1. It says, cry aloud and spare not, lift up the voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, in the house of Jacob their sins, right. And this is what we're to do, right? To tell the Israelites, right? You so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, as well as you Israelite foreigners, right? That you following in the ways of the world is going to lead you to death. And again, that's what allows for us to be hated. Because again, we see what the Lord Yahweh Shem Shai has, created us to do. Right, and that's to fear him and to keep his commandments. Fear Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, right, and keep the commandments. Right, it's Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, right? But see, majority of our people, they're contrary to that. Right, they're contrary to the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Shem Shai. Right, they follow in the ways of the heathens. Right, so we're letting them know. And according to St. John the 3rd chapter, right, they don't want to come to this truth. They don't want to come to this understanding, right? And because it requires them to change, it requires them to convert, and they don't want to, right? They're all about the belly. They're all about what feels good to them, So they're not going to come to this truth, right? And that's majority of our people. But see, there's still the elect of the nation of Israel that is still being woken up in this time. And this is why you see the prophets continuously, right, making video epistles throughout the week and every weekend, right, going out to the highways and byways, right, preaching this gospel, this truth, which again is contrary to Esau and his system, right, that he has set up, right, which allows for us to be hated, man, And this is also why we see Esau, again, setting up these different laws and policies, right, to come after us, to try to stop this truth from coming out. But see, you can do nothing against the truth but for the truth, right? So all he's doing is aiding in, the prophecy of Amos 8 and 11, right, the famine of the word, as well as what we're going into now, right, that persecution, right, to arise. Matter of fact, let me go back to that in St. John 15, right? It says right here, verse 20, it says, remember the word that I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. That's right, because we're preaching Yahweh Shai, right? Preaching repentance, right, to our people, right? And at the same time, we're revealing who the antagonist of this whole story is, that's going to open up the door for persecution, which again is what these laws and policies that are now being passed, right, open up the door for Esau to be able to do, But I'll read the header again. This is on the peoplesvoice.tv. It says, Australia passes bill authorizing police to arrest citizens who post MIS information online, right? It says the Australian Parliament has passed 2 new bills that will set up a national gun buyback scheme and authorize police to arrest citizens who post hate speech or misinformation. Now let's go to that that word scheme. Let me see. I think we're gonna pull it up. Oh, Slaki, let's go up this. I do wanna 1 Corinthians. Oh, it's like 2 Corinthians. Chapter 2 and verse 11. It says, so that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil schemes. Right? So through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, we see what he's doing. Right? go to word scheme. Noema, right? Strong's G 3540. Noema. It says a mental perception, right? Thought, an evil purpose. That which thinks, the mind, thoughts, or purpose, right? So what he's doing, right? Especially, right, when you go into these, you different Davos meetings, which, I think today was, the end, or yesterday was the end of the, Davos meeting, that they just had, right? 2026 Davos, Switzerland, meeting. Actually, Trump, was there, right? The priest Asmawath, out there in Dallas, right? He ultimately did a lesson on it, saying that, they're saying that this was the biggest Davos meeting, ever, right? And that, this is the first time as well, right, that U.S. president, was at, a Davos meeting, so we see what's going on, man, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Al Shah. We see what's what's unfolding, or what's about to unfold, We understand why these different laws and policies are being established, right? And that's to ultimately, get rid of the opposition, right? Which, in this case would be us, right? We're in opposition against Esau Edom, right? And he's in opposition against us, So let's go back to this, right? It says in Australia's lower house, the gun buyback bill passed 96 to 45, with the Liberal National Coalition opposing, while the hate and extremism focused bill passed with amendments securing 116 votes to just 7, right? It says later on the evening, both bills made it through the Senate. Okay. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese wrote on X that the government was standing against hate and strengthening national security, right? It says the new gun buyback passes lower house after 3 hours. The combating anti-SEM, HAT, and extremism, firearms and customs laws bill 2026 introduces not only the national gun buyback scheme, but new restrictions around background checks, the sale of firearm types, and offenses relating to accessing information online about firearms, ammunition, accessories. And see, again, right, this is what Esau's trying to do, right? He's trying to eliminate, because Esau wants to establish his NWO, right, without any kind of, opposition or any kind of fight back, right? So he's ultimately trying to take these people's guns, right? Take them away, take their guns so they can't fight back, And this is what he's doing. And he's centering it around national security, right? Protection. Oh, we don't know who is who. So, we got to just ultimately eliminate as many guns as possible. So that way, when we do what we have to do, hey, we can protect, right? The nation, right? This is what they're ultimately, disguising it as. But in reality, again, we understand that Esau wants to be able to establish his NWO with no fight back, right? It says Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke told Parliament that had such measures been in place earlier, the Bondi Beach attackers would not have been able to legally obtain weapons. And see, the brothers through the spirit, right? We saw right through this Bondi Beach attack, right? There's all this information that came out that this, those shooters, right, were former IDF, right? That they were actual small hats, committing these crimes. And see, this is what Esau does, right? He has something that, is called problem reaction solution, or in the Latin, right, order ad chaos, right? It means order out of chaos. So he goes and creates the chaos, and then what does he do? He comes in and tries to set order, sets all these different laws and policies and bills and so on and so forth, right, that allow him, to have that, that tighter grip, which he did with, the 911, right? After that happened, right, he passed what? The Patriot Act. Right, which you can go and into it, right? The Patriot Act ultimately allows him to survey the masses, man, via phone or TV, or allows for him to do that. And seeing this is what we're seeing him try to do even more, right? It says the father of the terrorist duo, Saeed Akram, owned 6 firearms. And see, there's that 6, right? There's that 6. There you go, right? We read in Revelations, the matter of fact, let's grab that real quick. Go back to KJV. Right? 13 and verse 18. It says, here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, right? Which Esau, Edom, right? It says, and his number is 600, 60, which is 60, and 6, right? 666, right? So there you go. You know, we see right through it, man. Saying, oh, why couldn't he have 5 or 7 firearms? Why did it have to be 6, right? Come on, man. But anyways, it says, despite his son being interviewed and cleared by intelligence agencies over concerns of radicalism, right? Tells you it passed. Again, blaming the Bondi, whatnot. But I want to move on to the next bill, right? Right? Because again, what they're saying is, that whole situation, right, with not only deals with guns, but they're also saying that it had to deal with, those who, are anti-SEM, right? And when we told you that there was going to be, some different laws and policies that were going to be coming from this situation, and now we're here, right? See, Esau is getting sloppy, man, right? He's sloppy, right? There's no more wisdom in teaming, man, Esau is, we see right through your shit, man. You ain't got no wisdom no more, man. Right? As it says right here, in Jeremiah chapter 49 and verse 10, it says, but I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. Right? You're not able to sit there and continue to execute these plans, and we're not able to sit here and see what you're doing, right? And we're able to see it through the Spirit, right? Through the Ruach HaKodesh, right? Through Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, right? It says, he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brother and his neighbors, and he is not, right? So let's go back, right? I want to hit this second one, right? Because it's really the same law or bill, right? But it basically has 2 versions. Right? It says victims only need to feel fear under new HATE laws, right? It says the combating anti-SEM, HATE, and extremism, criminal, and migration laws, right? So this is the different section of it, right? It says Bill 2026 also passed with amendments from the opposition, right? It says the legislation introduces a new federal offense, making it illegal to publicly promote or incite racial hatred where the conduct would cause a reasonable person to feel intimidated, harassed, or fearful of violence, man. So basically they're stating that if you're saying something, right, out in public, and someone feels, right, that you might harm them, right, whether now or in the future, you're going to be considered to be inciting HATE or anti-SEM, right? It says the offense applies to speech, symbols, gestures, and online communication targeting people because of their race, color, or national or ethnic origin of the target, right? So if you speak on, basically, if you say, hey, like we do, right? We ultimately speak on the small hats, right? The tiny tops and whatnot, right? And how they are the wicked, right? How that race of people, right, are the wicked, and that they do all these different atrocities. And so basically any time that we bring that information up, right, we're going to be considered, to be inciting HATE or pushing HATE and anti-SEM, and whoever comes up and says, oh, I feel threatened, or I feel like they're going to be, and that's going to allow for, whoever to be apprehended, to be arrested, that's a persecution, right? It says the law does not require proof that hatred was actually generated or that a victim felt fear, only that the conduct itself would reasonably cause intimidation or fear. So it's not even that even if you say anything, right? It doesn't have to be actual proof, right? They could just say, hey, you know what you're saying could make somebody feel like you're gonna harm them. This, that, and the third. Get in the cop car. Get in the back, right? It says maximum penalties of up to 5 years imprisonment apply, with higher penalties for aggravated offenses, including cases involving religious officials or attempts to radicalize children. A narrow defense applies where speech or writing consists solely of quoting religious texts for teaching or discussion, right? Speaking on the scriptures. This is narrow, right? So we saying, we're preaching the Bible, this and the third. Right? That might not allow us, some kind of defense is basically what they're saying. No, it don't matter. Is what they're getting at, right? This is opposition leader Suzanne Allais confirmed Liberal MPs supported the amended bill. In the national interest, the Liberal Party has today stepped up to fix legislation that the Albanese government badly mishandled, Allais said in a statement issued after passing the bill. Right? So they passed it. It's passed. And again, this is going to open up the door, right, for that persecution, right? Habakkuk 2 and 3, right, for the visions yet for the appointed time, and at the end it shall speak. Which is ultimately prophecy, right? It's prophesied that this, persecution would arise, right? Because as we just read, right, that as they persecute Yahushua, they're going to persecute us, right? This is, what is that saying? Ooh. 21-12? Yeah, this is Luke 21-12. It says, but before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, right? Delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons. There you go, right? That 5-year imprisonment, right? Being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake, And we very well could be brought before, the higher ups and whatnot, man. But as it says right here, and it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, right, meaning your minds, not to meditate before what ye shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. That's right, man. Right, so the Lord's going to put it on, in our spirit, right, what we're going to say in those moments, man. And it could be a cold-ass one-liner, man. It could be a cold-ass one-liner, man. You just like, you're face down, right? They speaking and saying, what do you got to say for yourself? You look up, that an end is coming. You know what I mean? They're going to do whatever they're going to do at that moment. That'd be a cold one-liner. Or what Yahushua said even better. What he said upon his Pilate, man. Right? That, ultimately, his strength, was given from him, or what he's capable of doing was given to him, by the Most High. Or he can do nothing except to be given unto him by the Most High. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull that up. Give me one sec. Quran right here. Right here. This is St. John 19 and verse 10. Then said Pilate unto him, speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee and have power to release thee? And Yahushua answered, thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore he hath delivered me unto thee. Therefore he that delivered me unto thee hath the greater sin, right? So, it could be a quick little one-liner, right? Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except if it were given thee from above, Could be something like that, man, and I'm just, speculating. We don't necessarily know, right, exactly what's going to happen in those moments, but we understand it's going to take place, right? We're reading it. It's prophecy, We're reading its prophecy, man, But these are definitely the times that we're in. Right, that things are going to definitely, pick up, man, and Esau is definitely going to be acting, right, now that he's got his laws and policies right in place, man. Esau's already moving, man, and he's moving fast, but let me go ahead and grab this, and then we'll get out of here. This is Matthew's 5th chapter, and let I'll just, give verse 10, right? Matthew 5 and verse 10. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is in the kingdom of heaven, right? It's a blessing, right? To be persecuted, right? On this side for Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, there's a great reward for it. A great reward for it, right? Which is what, right? Everlasting life, perfection, And as we read also, scriptures say that, that he that shall lose his life for my name's sake, right, shall find it. We're going to receive that life, man, that glorification, Those who ultimately, get put to death, right? They're going to reign with Hamashiach 1,000 years, right? Being heirs to the promise, man, Right? It says, verse 11, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. And Esau definitely is the accuser of our brethren, man, right? So these different situations that we see with the Bondi Beach and so on and so forth, right? Those are ultimately false flags, right? False flag events which allow him to establish those different laws and policies, right? So that way he can come after, those who he's true, who are his true targets, and he's gonna post their pictures, right, all over, all over the news, billboards, whatever it is, man, right? This is what Esau does, right? He's not going to post any pictures or, people got to do that, the ultimate digging, right? When it comes to, these different, psyops that Esau do, right? And it comes to find out that he's the one that's doing it. But nonetheless, right, Esau, when it comes to those who are his true, opposition, right, us, right, he's going to post us all over the, the news and shit, man. And act as if we're the bad guys, right? But we understand he's the bad guy, man, right? But it says, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you, right? How wish I said it best, right? They have persecuted me, so they should persecute you, roughly paraphrasing. We read it in St. John, the 15th chapter, right? The servant is not greater than his master. So we're gonna be persecuted, man. But again, it's a great honor, to be persecuted for the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. It was a great reward for it, man. So rejoice and be glad, man. Right? It says, "Ye are the salt." That was ultimately the point. Hey, but we're blessed, man. Right? Lord will we be a part of the elect, man. We're blessed for sure. But that's all I got, man. Lord will is edifying. Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders, great millstone. Thanks, time I say shalom.